Konnichiwa, konbanwa, watashi wa Kurtlin Saide desu. I am going to discuss the theory of Sigmund Freud, but before that, let us first have some background of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud was a Viennese doctor who came to believe that the way parents dealt with children's basic sexual and aggressive desires would determine how their personalities develop and whether or not they would end up well adjusted as adults. Sigmund Freud is also a neurologist. Freud described children as going through multiple phases of sexual development, which are the following: the oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, latency stage, and genital stage. But before that, let us first know or identify the theory of personality. These are called tripartite theory of personality. These are id, ego, and superego. Now, let's first begin with id. Id is the primitive and instinctive component of personality. It consists all the inherited components of personality. When we say id, dito yung mga instincts, sexual and aggressive drives, kasama na rin yung mga hidden memories. Sa id, dito nag-ooperate yung pleasure principle, which is the idea that every wishful impulse should be satisfied immediately. Kung ano yung naisip ng tao, kailangan makuha niya na agad yun. Kumbaga, hindi niya iniisip kung ano yung pwedeng maging kantungan or kalabasan ng bagay na gagawin niya. Kumbaga, dinidisregard niya yung mga consequences na pwedeng makaapekto sa sarili niya mismo. Next is yung ego. Ego develops in order to mediate between unrealistic id and the external real world. So, ito yung tinatawag nila na reverie. Kasi dito yung parang conscious na pag-iisip ng isang tao. Ego operates according to the reality principle, working our realistic ways of satisfying the id's demands, often comprising or postponing satisfaction to avoid negative consequences of society. Nandito, nasa sa kanya yung parang desisyon kung ano yung paiiralin niya. Kung yung id ba or yung superego. O yung next natin is yung superego. Incorporates the values and morals of society which are learned for our parents and others. Dito napapasok yung mga ethical o kaya yung pagkakaintindi natin kung ano nga ba yung tama at mali. Dito nakasalalay na yung desisyon natin na dapat is maganda yung epekto or impact na mangyayari kapag yung desisyon natin ay nilikha natin. Next, before I discuss the 5 phases or stages of psychosexual theory of Sigmund, let us first discuss the following. These are the frustration, fixation, and overindulgence. So, ano nga ba yung frustration? Some people do not seem to be able to leave one stage and proceed on to the next. So, diba, when we do not acquire or do the things that we want, we become frustrated. Then, mag-iisip tayo kung ano ba yung kailangan or dapat natin gawin para mapunan or magawa yung mga dapat na gagawin natin. Frustration occurs when a particular stage may not be adequately met. Or possibly, the person's need may have been so well satisfied and reluctant to live in which there is overindulgence. So, dito na papasok yung overindulgence. Kapag ayaw nang umalis ng isang tao dun sa pace ng buhay niya na yun or ayaw niya nang mag-move forward. Next, both frustration and overindulgence may lead to fixation. Kasi yung fixation, nag-o-occur yan kapag nasobrahan or nakulahangan ng isang bata o isang tao sa isang bagay. So, mamaya mas ika-clarify pa natin kung ano nga ba ang fixation. So let's proceed to the 5 phases of psychosexual theory of development. As we grow up, we pass through 5 critical phases. Our sex drive, which is called the libido, focus in a different erogenous zone at each phase. So as I have said a while ago, these are the oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital stage. If our experiences during these phases was traumatic, we might develop fixations later in life, such as neurosis, dependencies, addiction, or depression. So, let's now begin to the first stage. This is the oral phase. It occurs within the age of birth to 1 year old. In the first year of our life, we discover the world through our oral senses. Our main pleasure comes from sucking our mother's breast or a bottle. So, we all experience naman yung breastfeeding or yung sa bottle. Dito sa oral stage, yung libido natin is nakafocus sa ating mga bibig. If someone is not satisfied in this stage, there's a possibility for him or her to lead in oral fixation. Yun nga yung sinasabi ko kanina, yung fixation. So, kapag yung tao ay tinawag na, yun nga, fixated siya, satisfy niya yung sarili niya sa pamamagitan ng paninigarilyo, gum chewing, and even biting their nails, or also known as oral gratification. So, examples. Cairo is weaned off his mother's breast without trauma. Next, Kay's mother stops feeding her within 4 months of age. Next, Sed is often left alone crying when he is hungry. So, yung first example natin is si Cairo. Dahil nga napunan yung pangangailangan niya nung siya ay bata, Cairo becomes a healthy and independent adult, while Kay suffers from trauma and develops oral fixation dahil napakaagang pinastop si Kay sa kanyang breastfeed or bottle feeding. Next is si Sed spends his entire life looking for oral stimulation. Dahil nga si Sed ay na-denied nung siya ay bata pa, nung siya ay baby pa, na-develop sa kanya yung pagiging aggressive and manipulative na personality. Next, the anal stage. It occurs within the age of 1 to 3 years old. A child who accepts the challenge of toilet training learns an important socialization skill and moves to the next stage. A child which does not deal with the conflict present by toilet training will develop one of the following personalities. So, ano nga ba yung mga personalities na ito? Una is yung anal retentive. Sa anal retentive, it is a personality who hates mess, obsessively tidy, punctual, and respectful to the authority. Yung isa naman is yung anal expansive. Kumbaga, he or she wants to share things with other people, or he or she likes giving things away. Siya din ay messy, disorganized, and rebellious. The primary focus of our libido sa phase na to is nasa anus natin or sa pagde-defecating. Examples. Cairo's parents praise his attempts to use the toilet and encourage him to learn at his own pace. Next, Kay's parents force potty training on her too early and punish her for mistakes. Last, Sed's parents neglect any efforts at potty training entirely. And as a result, si Cairo na sinuportahan at ginabayan ng kanyang magulang ay na-develop ang competent personality and a good and balanced relationship with authority. Si Kay naman na masyadong maaga na potty training develops an anal retentive personality. Kay becomes an over-controlling and stingy adult with disgust for her own body and a tendency to obey authority. Si Sed naman ay nakadevelop ng expulsive personality. He becomes messy, disorganized, inconsiderate of other people's feelings. Kumbaga, wala siyang pake kung ano yung mararamdaman ng ibang tao. Sarili niya lang yung iisipin niya, and naging rebellious din siya. Next, phallic stage. This occurs within 3 to 5 years old. Our libido now turns to the genitals as we discover the differences between the female and male genders. According to Freud, children in this stage discover their genitals. They are taught that it is not socially acceptable to expose themselves. So, sa phallic stage, may tinatawag na dalawang complex. Ito ay yung Oedipus complex and Electra complex. So, sa boys, ang tawag sa conflict na to is Oedipus complex. Boys' conflict in this phase occurs as a rivalry with their fathers, also called nga yung Oedipus complex. Kumbaga, yung lalaki, gusto niya lang is yung attention ng nanay niya. Kumbaga, parang nagiging kaaway or karibal niya yung tatay niya sa stage na ito. So, yung batang lalaki, ang pinaka-goal niya is mawala sa buhay nila ng nanay niya, yung tatay niya. Same as well sa babae. Ang tawag naman dito is yung Electra complex, na kung saan gusto ng babaeng bata na sa kanya lang yung atensyon ng tatay niya. So, rival niya din yung kanyang nanay. Examples: Cairo, whose father was present at this stage, learns to take on a male role and respects both gender. So, dahil sa stage na to, present or nandun yung tatay ni Cairo, nabigyan siya ng gabay na kung saan natutunan niya kung ano yung dapat at mga hindi dapat gawin ng isang lalaki. Next, Sed, whose father was absent at this stage, failed to develop a strong of manhood. He has a mother fixation and not sure about his sexuality. So, dahil nga walang gumabay kay Sed nung siya ay bata, hindi niya alam tuloy ngayon kung paano nga ba kumilos or gumalaw ang isang lalaki. Kung ano nga ba yung dapat at hindi dapat gawin ng isang lalaki. So, for the second to the last stage, it is called latency stage, and it occurs within the age of 6 to puberty. In the latent stage, Freud says that children put aside their sexual desires to pursue learning. This setting aside of sexual desire is known as sublimation. So, sa latency stage, yung libido ng isang bata ay nakafocus na kung saan siya mag-grow, kung saan yung bagay na may pakinabang sa kanya. So, in able to pursue his or her goal, kailangan mag-focus siya dun sa mga bagay na magde-develop siya. So, examples nito ay Cairo follows many hobbies. Kay loves learning at school. Sed makes a lot of friends. So, as you can see, kung mapapansin natin, ay wala talagang conflict sa stage na to. Kumbaga, nagkakaroon ng development and nagkakaroon din ng benefits ang isang bata sa latency stage. Last but not the least, genital stage. This occurs within the age of puberty and adulthood. The libido becomes active again and we develop interest in sexual partners. So, sa stage na ito, naging active na naman yung libido natin. And ang main focus ng libido natin ngayon is yung pagkakaroon ng one-to-one relationship with other people. Cairo who has experienced a childhood life without much trauma succeeds in building a strong ego. Next, since ego is weaker than his superego, he obeys norm and authorities. K has a weak ego and superego. And as a result, dahil nga si Cairo ay hindi masyadong nagkaroon ng trauma nung siya ay bata, Cairo is disciplined at work, has a loving relationship, and a fulfilled sex life. Next, dahil si Sid ay mahina yung ego niya, so dahil doon, Sid suppresses his desires, which leads to the development of perversion. Kumbaga, pag sinabi kasi natin suppresses, yung kumbaga tinigil niya. So, dahil tinigil niya yon, nagkaroon siya ng parang hunger sa isang bagay. So, dahil nga pinigilan niya yung sarili niya na makuha yung isang bagay, nag-develop siya ngayon ng perversion. Last, si K na mahina pareho ang ego and yung superego. Her sexual needs are more important than social norms or other people's feeling. Kumbaga, si K, nakafocus lang siya sa sarili niya. Kumbaga, naging selfish siya. Kung ano lang yung pleasurable sa sarili niya, doon lang siya nakafocus. Hindi niya, kumbaga, dinidisregard niya kung ano yung mararamdaman ng iba at hindi rin siya sumusunod sa mga tamang gawain. So, that's the end of the theory of Sigmund Freud. So, I am going to discuss as well the theory of John Piaget. So let's begin. John Piaget. John Piaget was a Swiss psychologist and epistemologist. Kilala siya dahil sa kanyang tanyag na theory of cognitive development. So, meron siyang factors that influence cognitive development. And these are schema, assimilation, accommodation, and equilibration. Let's first start with schema. Schema, mental structures that an individual uses to organize knowledge and guide cognitive processes and behavior. Sa schema, dito yung pagsasagap or paglalagay ng information sa ating mga pag-iisip. Next is yung assimilation. When we change or add new information to schema. Example ng assimilation. Example, yung bata, nakakita siya ng LC sa isang electric pan. And then, nung umalis sila, nakakita siya ng isang helicopter. And nakita niya na may LC yun. So, ang pagkakaintindi niya na ang helicopter ay isa ding electric pan dahil pareho silang may LC. Yun ang assimilation. Next, when we say accommodation, arrangement, or revising existing schema. So, dito na papasok yung realization ng isang bata na yung electric pan ay isang device na ginagamit kapag mainit yung panahon and yung helicopter ay isang type of transportation or isa siyang sasakyan. And last, yung equilibration. Achieving a proper balance between assimilation and accommodation. So, dito binabalance niya na yung kung ano yung nasa assimilation natin and then yung sa accommodation natin which is yung realization ng isang bata. Sensory motor stage. This is the stage when a child who is initially reflexive and grasping, sucking, and reaching becomes more organized in his movements and activity. So, sa sensory motor stage, dito na ipapasok yung 5 senses ng isang bata or ng isang tao. Yung touch, yung smell, yung hear, and so on and so forth. So, next is yung pre-operational stage. So, sa pre-operational stage, intelligence in this stage is intuitive in nature. Child can make mental representations and is able to pretend the child is now even closer to the use of symbol. Kumbaga dito, papasok na yung parang nag-i-imagine na yung isang bata ng kung ano-anong mga bagay. So, sa pre-operational stage, merong 5 na naka-under doon. Ito yung symbolic function, egocentrism, centration, irreversibility, and animism. So, ano nga ba ang symbolic function? Symbolic function is the ability to represent objects and events. So, dito na papasok yung pag-i-imagine ng isang bata or pagre-represent niya ng isang bagay or ng isang event. Number 2, egocentrism, the tendency of the child to only see his point of view and to assume that everyone also has his same point of view. Dito sa egocentrism, parang nagiging selfish or makasarili yung bata. Kumbaga, ang nasa isip niya, kung ano yung iniisip niya, yun din yung iniisip ng ibang tao. Which is, hindi naman talaga totoo. Next, centration, the tendency of the child only focus on one aspect of a thing or event. Dito naman sa centration, nakafocus lang yung bata sa isang bagay. Example nito is, merong 2 batang babae na pareho ng height at pareho rin ng haba ng buhok. And tinanong ang bata na sino ang may pinakamahabang buhok sa 2 babae. So, sumagot ang bata na sinabi niya, pareho lang. So, kapag pinalitan yung isang batang babae ng isang matangkad na batang babae pero pareho pa rin ng haba ng buhok, kapag nakita yun ng bata na ang iisipin niya ay mas mahaba ang buhok ng batang mas maliit ang height. Next, irreversibility, inability to reverse their thinking. So, example nito is kapag pinagbilang mo ang bata from 1 to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then, tinanong mo siya at pinagawa mo na magbilang, pabaliktad, from 10 to 1. So, dito na papasok yung irreversibility na hindi kayang gawin pa nung bata na magbilang backwards. And last but not the least, animism, the tendency of children to attribute human-like traits or characteristic to inanimate objects. Kumbaga, example nito is, naglalaro ang isang bata and then bigla siyang napukpok or nauntog sa isang lamesa. And then bigla niya sinabi, bad table. Kumbaga, sinisi niya yung table na yun ang may kasalanan kung bakit siya napukpok. Which is, hindi naman talaga. Dahil parang ginagawa niya na buhay yung table kahit hindi naman. So that's the end of my discussion. The following stages will be continued to discuss by Mary Ann Sampson.